Classic American folk heroes are defined by their ability to bend nature to their will. Legends like Paul Bunyan and Davy Crockett conquered the wilderness with axes, rifles, and brute strength. Then there is Johnny Appleseed, the barefoot, tin pot-wearing pacifist who spent his life skipping through the woods to hand out sweet apples to pioneers. Almost every detail of that popular image is a historical fabrication. The real man was John Chapman, an eccentric and highly calculating real estate tycoon whose primary product kept the American frontier heavily intoxicated. By the time of his death, Chapman owned or long-term leased roughly 1,200 acres of land across Ohio and Indiana, making him remarkably wealthy. So why did a post-Civil War nation bury the history of a successful frontier alcohol supplier, choosing instead to invent a sanitized fairy tale saint? At the turn of the 19th century, the United States saw a massive influx of settlers migrating into the rugged expanse of the Northwest Territory. To legally secure a 100-acre homestead, land conglomerates like the Ohio Company had a very specific stipulation. Settlers had to plant exactly 50 apple trees on their property within 3 years. Chapman saw a business opportunity. He traveled ahead of the migration wave, clearing small plots of land in strategic locations to plant raw nurseries. When the settlers finally arrived to claim their land, Chapman sold them the legally mandated saplings at a premium markup, or he simply flipped his fully planted orchard plots outright. Those growing trees also served as physical boundary markers, staking permanent legal claims in the woods. Chapman had successfully cornered a captive real estate market. He used apple trees as a legal loophole for land acquisition, rather than an altruistic gift of food. Chapman followed a Christian denomination called Swedenborgianism. Their doctrine strictly forbade the common agricultural practice of grafting, cutting a branch from an existing tree to clone it, because believers felt it caused the plant to suffer. This flowchart illustrates extreme heterozygotes. A seed from a sweet red apple will not grow into an identical tree. It produces unpredictable, misshapen fruits. Because Chapman exclusively planted from seed, his orchards yielded bitter, acidic apples known as spitters, completely unfit for eating. Fortunately for Chapman, pioneers weren't looking for a snack. They faced a serious survival problem. Raw drinking water on the frontier was heavily contaminated with dangerous bacteria. Those bitter spitter apples were the perfect raw material for fermenting hard apple cider. The fermentation process killed the bacteria. Hard cider became a safe daily staple that replaced water, coffee, and tea at the pioneer dinner table. The average frontier settler drank roughly 10.5 ounces of hard cider every single day. In practice, Chapman functioned as the frontier's essential narcotics wholesaler, supplying the quaff that served as both a daily survival necessity and a form of liquid currency. Jump forward to 1871, decades after Chapman's death. The country emerged from the trauma of the Civil War, desperate for national healing and a unified mythology. That year, Harper's New Monthly magazine, then a massive cultural engine with a national reach, published an essay by W.D. Haley that retroactively invented the whimsical Johnny Appleseed persona. Haley's narrative was aggressively stripped of real estate ledgers and cider production. By turning Chapman into a palatable hero who planted for the sake of planting, Haley gave the post-war public a way to celebrate the frontier without acknowledging its commercial greed. At the time, American readers were increasingly unsettled by the vulgarity and violence associated with Western migration. They required an icon who represented the spirit of the pioneer without the stain of the rifle or the ledger. By focusing on the humble act of dropping a seed, the myth reframed the conquest of the continent as a peaceful, natural growth, rather than a series of brutal, state-sponsored land grabs. John Chapman's real apples were terribly bitter, but as the American empire expanded, it desperately needed a sweet myth to justify its conquest.